Hi, everybody. This is Silvio Canto in Dallas, Texas on Friday, May the 8th, and welcome to our commentary. Well, we're going to get into Virginia in just a second because that was a huge story coming out of Virginia in the Supreme Court. But before I do, I want to refer to you to an article that I wrote over at American Thinker today, Friday, americanthinker.com. And it's an article about the summer of 2026. And it's based on another article that I had read from a fellow named David Strom. He's a really good writer, and I always check with him every day and get a lot of inspiration, a lot of good ideas. And he wrote an article this week about he thinks that the summer of 2026, we're going to see some problems. And a lot of it is the fact that the left is frustrated. They want to make some attention, and very often they get their attention by doing these riots and so on, somewhat like in 2020. And I think that's a very good possibility that this is going to happen. As I mentioned in my commentary in the article, that look, the left has the money, they have the time, and they have lots and lots of volunteers who are going to show up to do these things. So I think a lot of our cities are already in deep trouble because they're so poorly run. And I think the possibility of trouble this summer is a real possibility. I think you could see that happening. And I hope it doesn't happen. I hope I'm wrong in saying that. But I think the possibility of some riots this summer, particularly with the midterm elections around the corner, that could be a real possibility. Now, I think it's going to hurt the Democrats. I really do. In other words, I don't think it's going to help the Democrats to see these police cars on fire or, neighborhoods being trashed like we saw in 2020. This is not going to help the Democrats, but it's the kind of thing that they love, this kind of chaos, because this is how they keep their people entertained, so they don't have to talk about the problems or any solutions for the problems in some of these cities like New York City or Chicago or Seattle or whatever it may be. So the summer of 26, I hope I'm wrong, but I think we may see some riots and some violence in the summer of 26. Well, without question, one of the biggest stories in quite some time came out of Virginia this morning. The Virginia Supreme Court said no to this new map that the Democrats had drawn up. Basically, they said it was unconstitutional. So it wasn't really anything other than that. They just said, hey guys, you didn't play by the rules when you did these maps. In Virginia, there is a commission to do this, or some arrangement to do this, and it was not followed. They simply said, we're gonna redraw these maps and we're gonna do whatever it takes, and they did. And they took a map that was 6-5 Democrat, which is a fairly good representation of the state, to 10-1 Democrat, which is not a good representation of the state. On the contrary, it's an obscene map. I guess about the only thing more obscene than Virginia is the map up in Illinois, which is 14 Democrat, 3 Republican. So anyway, so the court said, no, you cannot do this. You violated the rules. It's unconstitutional to do it the way you did it. And there is a process to do it. If you want to redraw the maps, you got to do it the right way. So it's a huge victory for the Constitution of Virginia. Really, that's what this is. It's a huge victory for the Constitution of Virginia because the Supreme Court of Virginia said, no, you got to play by the rules. If you don't like the rules, you can change them, but these are the rules. And I think for many Democrats who thought this was a done deal, it's quite a setback. And it does interfere with their plans of taking over the House, because now the situation goes back to 6-5. And I don't think that's going to change a heck of a lot in November, because those 11 districts that they have now, the 6-5 Democrat advantage, I think that's pretty fair in that state. And they will very likely end up with another in November with another map, 6-5, maybe 7-4, if the Democrats have some kind of a blue wave. But, 7-4 is very different than 10-1. So anyway, huge victory for the state of Virginia, the Constitution of Virginia. And we want these state constitutions to be respected. I mean, that's a big part of being a country. Now, there are three people who come out of this. One is a winner and two are losers. The big winner is former Governor Glenn Youngkin, who stood up against this, who was the face of the campaign against this, and he turns out to be right. And he will be. I've said it before. Glenn Youngkin is going to be a factor in 2028. He's going to play a role in the 28 elections, whether he is the VP, let's say, in the GOP ticket, or maybe a member of the next GOP cabinet. But Glenn Youngkin is going to hang around. And I think this victory in Virginia is going to give him a lot more firepower. Two big losers, the Governor Strasburger. And here's the funny thing about it. I read a few days ago, before the Supreme Court decision, that she was told that this was not going to work, not to do this. She was told by legal experts, don't do this. It's not going to work. And apparently she also told the members of the Virginia Congress, no, let's not do this. It's not going to work. But, she let it go through anyway. So now she looks bad. She looks bad. And she's already pretty unpopular for a governor who's only been there 6 months. So I think she may have just burned up her political career, whatever plans she had of maybe pursuing something further down the road. I think her career is pretty much dead in the water for a while. Now, things can always change, but I think for the near future, she's not going anywhere politically and may very well face all kinds of problems with Democrats who may be looking at what happened in Virginia as a horrible opportunity and a lot of money that was spent promoting that referendum or that vote. The other big loser here is former President Obama, who went in totally. I mean, he was on television constantly in Virginia saying that we have to do this to protect our democracy, to save our democracy. This was critical to save our democracy. We have to protect our democracy. Well, he lost big. And I think that hopefully that's the end of President Obama getting involved in partisan politics. I wrote a post a few days ago saying that President Obama would be a lot better off not getting involved in this kind of politics. It doesn't do him any good. Former presidents should not be doing politics. They need to be doing things that are not partisan or political, like, foundations and programs, like George W. Bush. George W. Bush here in Texas, he's, former president, but you don't see Bush doing politics. He sticks to the nonpartisan stuff. That's what President Obama needs to do. Get away from this political climate and just concentrate on being a former president. Because I think this thing in Virginia just did him a tremendous amount of harm. And that's why I say he's one of the big losers. So with respect to the 2026 election, clearly this helps the Republicans because it means that they're not going to lose 4 seats or 5 seats or whatever in Virginia. It's not going to be 6-5. It will more than likely turn out that way. So at the end of the day, Virginia is not going to matter as far as changing the composition of the House. But again, it's early. There's a lot of time left and a lot of things can happen in the House. But this is not a good day for the Democrats and many Democrat leaders who invested a great deal in this referendum in Virginia. A couple of things on this day in history. 1945, May 8th, it was Victory Europe Day, or also known as VE Day. And there were lots of celebrations in Europe and London. I'm sure you've seen the videos and seen the pictures. People were celebrating the end of at least the European War. The Japanese War or the Pacific War, that was not done yet. That was another 4 or 5 months away. And we also remember on this day, Harry Truman, who became president of the United States and was the president of the United States on this day, May the 8th, on VE Day, and of course later had to finish the war in the Pacific as well. So Harry Truman was born on this day in 1884, passed away in 1972. Thank you for listening. This is Silvio Canto in Dallas, and we'll talk to you later. Bye-bye, everybody.